Hi everybody, it's Alyce-Kay Ruckelshaus from Threshold of Hineni, and I'm just talking about ways that God has blessed me and how He's taken care of me and gotten me through in the last 10 months since Bill was killed in a car accident. I'm kind of hoping that this will help me to not get really depressed during these next couple months while we have a lot of anniversaries, and then it'll be getting to the year of when he was killed. And I really am hoping not to get like super depressed. I'm working on Franken paper, and that's not anything important. It has nothing to do with this. It's just that I'm working on it while I'm doing this. So the thing that I drew today was Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and so that has been like one of the biggest, one of the hugest, biggest things that has helped me through this time. So a few days after Bill died, I had sent out an email to everybody on my email list telling them what had happened. It was really hard and awkward. You know, how do you start an email telling people that your husband's just been killed? But I knew that I needed to do it, you know? And so yeah, it was just like really, oh my goodness, it was so hard. But I wrote first to my closest friends, and then I think it was like a week or so later that I wrote to just everybody. And one of my closest friends called me, probably the day that I sent out the email, I'm not sure. His name's Carl, and he's a really good friend of mine from Minnesota. And he called, and we started talking, you know, like almost every day. Well, I think maybe every day for a while. You know, he would just call and talk to me to kind of help me get through this all and stuff. And we'd have really good conversations about Bill, about whatever. And anyway, so one of the things was that he had been listening to this Catholic radio station. And I'm not Catholic, I'm Protestant. But he really liked it, and he was Protestant also. He really liked it, and he recommended that I listen to it. Well, for a long time I didn't. He had recommended this to me like a couple of years before, and you know, Bill and I had talked about it and stuff. But it's like, you know, we don't really have time or really that much interest. But I think maybe a couple weeks after he told me about this radio station, Relevant Radio, and you know, there's not a station that carries it in my area, so that I found out, he told me about the app. They have an app online, and so I went to that, and so I started listening, and it was just so nice because it was like, I mean, really, you know, with what they talk about on there, it was pretty much stuff that I believe in anyway, so it wasn't a problem. And everybody on there was just so full of faith and so devoted to Christ and everything, and so it was just a very calming thing. Well, at one point I heard in the afternoon what was called the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and it sounded kind of interesting to me, and I thought, well, it'd be interesting to do that. And you pray it with a rosary, and so I had never had a rosary before, so I ordered one online, and when it came, I started praying it along with them. And as it turns out, what they do is every day at about 4:05, after the news, they pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and there's a group of people, probably thousands of people, who have signed up that they'll pray it. And so people call in with prayer requests, or what they call prayer intentions. That's what the Catholics call them. And it's for things like, you know, people being healed, or you know, I've heard like, you know, somebody whose neighbor child was kidnapped, and you know, then people calling with answers to prayers of seriously things like, I think one recently was somebody who had a brain tumor, and the scan on Wednesday and Thursday showed it really big, but then when they scanned it on Friday before they were going to take her into surgery, it was completely disappeared. And people whose organs have grown back, and so they didn't need a transplant. And then like a lot of people being healed from various things, and right now a lot of people calling in with relatives or family members or friends who have COVID-19 and stuff. But it's like, it's so faith filled, and it really helps bring you peace. And it took me a while to get used to the prayer, because of course I'm not used to Catholic type of prayers. So it's like this thing that's already written and stuff. But that was really what I needed right then, because since Bill died, I have not been able to think very clearly. I'm getting a lot better, and there are days now that I can think completely clearly. But for a while, it was very hard for me to think, and so it was hard for me to pray. It was hard for me to study the Bible. So I started like watching sermons on YouTube and stuff rather than trying to study the Bible for myself, because I just couldn't do it. Nothing made sense to me. I mean, not just, oh, Bill's death doesn't make sense. It wasn't like that. It was like the words I was reading didn't make sense. I could not figure out the gist of a passage. And so having this prayer that was already there, and I think my friend pointed out to me, because I wanted to learn the prayer so that I could follow along and pray along with them. And my friend pointed out that there was a website that had it, and so I went to that, and that explained like exactly how to do the prayer, how to use the rosary for it, because I did want to use the rosary for it. I mean, I could just pray right along, but I was interested in the whole experience of using the rosary and stuff. And so it explained how to do that, and then it also had a video of the prayer being prayed by a church, and it was actually sung, and that was really good. I started listening to that each night and praying along with them, because it just helped me to I could actually follow the words and memorize them that way, because it was slower because it was sung. But it was kind of interesting, because as I did this more and more, and I got to where I was doing it in the morning and then doing it at 4 o'clock my time, 3 o'clock where the radio station is, every day, and then also doing it before I went to bed. And it wasn't, those things can become superstitious. You can feel like, if I don't do this, then God's going to punish me or something like that. It wasn't that. It was that it was helping me and comforting me so much that I prayed it a lot, because I knew how much it was helping me. And one of the purposes of that prayer is praying for those who are dying. And so since Bill had just died, that was really meaningful to me, especially as I came to realize that traditionally it's prayed mostly at 3 p.m. because that was when Jesus died. So 3 p.m. wherever you are in the world, you can pray at any time, but that's like the traditional time to pray it. And so someplace in the world it was 3 p.m. and there are Catholics everywhere, so there probably was somebody praying that at the time that Bill died, and that was just a real comfort to me. Of course they didn't know him, and they weren't praying specifically for him, but that's one of the things that was so wonderful about this prayer, was that the first time that I heard it, and they said, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world," and I thought, wow, that's a big prayer to pray. Have mercy on the whole world. That's a lot to pray for. And how could you pray for that in a meaningful way? Because that takes a lot of faith to pray for that. Well, when you pray that, and you say that 50 times in this prayer, and I'll come back to that. You say this 50 times in the prayer. So I'm praying this morning, afternoon, and night. I'm praying that 150 times. Eventually, that gets into your soul, and you start having faith that God can be merciful to the whole world. And and it's not the things that people call in and ask for prayer for, and we pray for those. We really pray with faith, and it has built my faith so much. I've been around places where miracles are done. I've been in places where people pray for healing. I have prayed for healing for people, and they've been healed. I do not have that gift, but there have been a few times when I've prayed for somebody for healing, and they've been healed. But seeing this happen day after day after day after day just builds your faith so much. Okay, so getting back to saying it 150 times a day, because I know that that's going to bother a lot of my Protestant friends. So let me just talk about that a little bit. Because the immediate thing that we go to is meaningless repetition. Jesus said not to pray with meaningless repetition. Well, he didn't say not to pray with repetition, and I'm not just picking apart words. This is, what he said. He didn't say no repetition. He said no meaningless repetition. And it is up to you as the person who's praying whether repetition becomes meaningless to you or not. And they do something where Catholics, when they're praying the rosary, when they're praying the chaplet or other prayers that are repetitious, they have things that they meditate on, and I'm not really clear about that. For me, I've been doing this for almost a year. I'd say 9 months, 9.5 months. And it still has not become meaningless to me. Because when I pray for mercy, when I say, for the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world, I choose the things that I'm focusing that prayer on each time. So like for 1 decade, so a rosary, I should have had my rosary here. A rosary has 5 sections of 10 beads each. And so you're praying in those sections. That's called a decade because it's got 10 beads. And so I might take 1 decade to pray this for myself. And I might take 1 decade to pray for a friend who is in kidney failure and he needs a kidney transplant. He's on dialysis, and I really, really want him to be able to get that kidney transplant, or better yet, for God to just give him a new kidney, because that's happened, And so I'll pray a decade for him, or maybe even the whole thing for him a lot of times. Or a friend I know who's having marriage problems and has called me, I'll pray for them, for their marriage, or whatever it is, whatever I know of that needs praying for. Sometimes I will pray for abortion. I will pray, like the first decade will be for the babies who are being aborted, and the next decade will be for the moms. The next decade will be for the doctors. And you know what? When you pray for mercy for abortion doctors, when you are like as against abortion as I am, it really changes your heart. It hasn't made me less against abortion, but it has made me feel compassion towards those doctors, and wanting to see God's mercy poured out on them. And you know what? If God shows them mercy, the biggest mercy would be them getting salvation, them coming to Jesus, and they'll stop doing those abortions. And so that's just more effective to me than praying, God, please stop the abortions. It's like Jesus said, I didn't really think about this until just now, but it's like Jesus said, you don't pray a spirit away without replacing it with something, or else it'll bring back more. So it's like, let's not pray just for abortion to end. We need to pray for these doctors. We need to pray for everybody who's involved, that God would have compassion and mercy on them. And then that changes our hearts to have compassion and mercy. And especially if there's somebody I'm having a hard time with, which since I'm by myself a lot, that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I will pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. I'll dedicate those to them, and I will think of them when I'm praying, have mercy on us and on the whole world, because rather than praying my agenda, praying for God to have mercy, and that changes my heart towards them. And so it's just been really beautiful. And then there's, I should have printed this out because I'm no good at remembering it, and of course I can't use my phone right now because I'm recording, but there's a prayer at the end of the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and this is the thing that attracted me the most, and I'll try to remember it, but I know I'm going to get it wrong, so just excuse me for that. But I'll put it in the description below. But it's basically, Eternal Father, in whom mercy is endless and the treasury of compassion inexhaustible, look kindly on us and increase your mercy in us, so that in difficult moments we may not despair or become despondent. I'm not sure if that's right, but in faith or something, I don't remember exactly, in faith, submit ourselves to your holy will, which is love and mercy itself. You know what, I'm gonna have to print that out because there are things that I want to talk about with that, and I'll just make that a separate video. But it's that little part of the prayer has meant so much to me and has spoken so much to me and built me up so much. So I'll talk about that another time. But anyway, there's a lot about the chaplet that has just really, really ministered to me. It's been one of the biggest things that's gotten me through since Bill died. It's just been wonderful. All right. I love you all. Um, and I guess I wanted to say one more thing about it. The guy who leads it, Drew Mariani, he is just so compassionate. When people call in with their prayer requests, it's like he does some teaching about faith and stuff at that time, but and he does, that teaching to them and encouraging them and building their faith. And he's just so compassionate, and he has so much faith, and he talks about coming to God with a big cup. Don't just pray that God would help me to not have pain through this thing. Pray for it to be healed. Pray to be healed, but always being willing to accept what God's will is, that sometimes he doesn't heal us. Sometimes he chooses to let us experience that pain. And Drew has talked a lot about suffering and how God uses that in our lives and how that can benefit other people and stuff. And that's just really inspired me and been really, really good for me and has built up my faith a lot. So anyway, so if you want to hear it, I will put the website for the app below, and you can check it out. Again, it is Catholic, and that may bother some of you if you're Protestant. It's not a problem for me, but I don't want to try to trick you into something or anything. I don't want you to feel like you've been misled. So anyway, yeah, that's just been really, really cool. And I'll talk about that little part of the prayer on a different video. Okay, I love you all. Bye-bye. Let's pray for each other, please.